Welcome to Module 2 of my Original Species course. Here we'll be discussing design. If you're on YouTube, this is where the lessons start, and I'll be releasing it lesson by lesson. If you're the artistic type, where you already had your species drawn before even watching this course, then you probably don't need much help with this, but I recommend you watch it anyway, because you might learn something new. If you're not so artistic, then this section is going to be helping you a ton. And I super suggest taking notes and paying close attention. In Module 2, we'll be going over the types of species communities, tools to help plan, how design chooses your audience, approach, how to make a species without drawing, quadruped versus biped, and species design, and species identity. This is a pretty straightforward section. If you're not so artsy, this might help you because I'm not so artsy. And if you are artsy, you're going to get that special angle that I have by not being artsy. If you're viewing this on YouTube, remember to check out the pinned comment to find out how you can access the rest of the lessons before they come out on YouTube. Module 2, Lesson 1, Open versus Closed. If you're interested in original species, you probably think you don't need this section because you know the difference between these two. But you're wrong. There are 5 different types of original species, and yes, at the most basic, you have open and closed. But there are ranges and tones between that, and we don't deal in binaries here. The 5 types are open, closed, regulated, art RPG, and adopt only closed. When people think, I hate closed species, they're conflating many types of regulated and closed communities. Most of the time they're talking about art RPGs, and most of the time these people have little to no experience with these communities, or their experience is entirely secondhand, which is why you'll get vague complaints like, they restrict creativity. When I get comments like this, I ask, have you been in a closed species community? And how do they restrict creativity? Then cite examples of how many species have traits that many would never even consider, and how closed species make people better artists by pushing them outside of their comfort zone and breaking stagnancy. They usually don't respond back. So if someone gives you crap for a closed species, ignore them. It's the internet. It's so easy to block people here. You can also just ignore them and, let them do your advertising for you, because despite hating closed species, they absolutely love to talk about closed species. And they also like harassing you by barking up your tree unprompted. Now with that tangent done, here are the types and their identifying traits. Important note on these though. These are just common practices in these communities. I'm not passing judgment on any of them, and I have made one of each, so I definitely can't judge. Open species are known for having little to no rules, usually just enough to establish the species' unique identity. Little to no built-in monetization. In order to monetize, you have to cut off access to something. They'll likely still have merch, sell bases, YCHs, adopts, and the like, but they won't have MYOs. MYO means make your own. People pay you or earn an MYO in order to make a character. It's possible some open species will have a closed or restricted variant, for example, mochi raptors and king traits, or wicker beasts and hybrid adopts. They have no approval process, since there aren't rules. There isn't an approving body, and since the monetization is minor, they'll likely not hire staff to manage such a thing. No master list. Master lists are like a Pokedex of characters, we'll go over that later. Possibly no community. People can make what they want without having to participate in a community, so they can make their character and never actually have to meet their peers. If there is a community, it's a mix of both artists and non-artists. Closed species are known for a lot of different things, and one species won't have all of these traits. So it's more like if a species has a bunch of these traits, then they're probably a closed species of some sort. They're known for monetization is built in, and has things like MYOs. Master lists. Charging for master list updates and entries. This is because it's time consuming and to discourage people from changing them too much. Traits and trait buying. This is most common in art RPG closed species, which are a subset of closed species. This is also another form of monetization and is always MYOs. Paid MYOs, either through currency, real or fake. Progression system, usually in the form of fake currency or funny money, as I call it. Big communities, primarily populated by artists or people who have money. Community events that give character rewards. A species that you can't make without permission from the owner or is closed off entirely. A species that you can only own if you buy and adopt. Lots of very specific rules like, you can't have horns that are bigger than X inches or smaller than X inches. This is because this community is selling multiple horns by sizes or size enhancements for traits. I would recommend against this. I call it hair splitting, taking something small and cutting it smaller and smaller and smaller when they're all really just the same thing. Events and art prompts that reward funny money. Regulated species are species that want to be closed, but are trying to avoid the stigma associated with closed species. These species will have a mix of traits from both open and closed. If they're a regulated species, they'll usually say so, like bay foxes. They say this unprompted because they are very quick to not want to be lumped in with closed species, as it is negative for how they are viewed, even though they are very close to being the same thing. This is often applied to art RPGs that let you make a basic or starter character that you use in the RPG to earn money and grow them. My species, Mera, were like this, but I'm not a coward, so I called them closed, with an open option. I won't list traits for this one because it's subjective, and usually comes down to whether the owner claims it to be a regulated or restricted species. Regulated is simply a buzzword to make it sound official, but not exclusive. Adopt-only species traits are: you can only own a character if you buy an adopt. Very little lore. Little to no community. The exclusive nature of it prevents anyone without money from joining. If they have a large community, then it's likely people who don't have one but want one, or the community is attached to their artist's Discord and they're a popular artist. Art RPG traits are like regulated, but more specific. My species Mera, that is now part of Nomchromancy, and Nomchromancy itself, are art RPGs. These traits are: a game that is played with the player's art. Art prompts, community events, and fan art all used to earn funny money that is used to add traits or upgrade the player's characters. The site requires a special infrastructure that caters to banking, trading, submissions, queues, and more. Typically, this requires a site like Lorekeeper, but others do exist. Since it requires Lorekeeper, these tend to be a bit rare, as Lorekeeper requires coding experience. Species is hosted in a DeviantArt community. Look at Chimerion, for example. Traits that are strictly on an MYO system. Shortcuts to traits and funny money through monetization, like microtransactions. Large community, primarily full of artists. Owner has a significant social media presence, like me or Silmaru. We're not on the same level, but I do have more than most people. This helps us get a bigger audience for our species. Traits that cost more currency the more they break the species identity. Master lists. May or may not charge for updates. Funny money. Possibly very specific rules like trait sizing or color. I don't personally do this. So as a quicker summary, open means little to no rules with little to no input from a governing body after the species is finished and posted, with a community that varies in size. Closed are species that, for some reason or another, you're not allowed to make without permission, earning, or buying. Communities vary by type. Adopt is closed, but you only own a character if you buy an adopt from someone. Many will create new species for adopts and do them as one-offs or themed to avoid negativity. Art RPGs are closed species that anyone can join and use their art, fan art, and event art to earn currency and make their own character. So not really closed in the common sense, because with enough work anyone can join, but technically closed because you're not supposed to make them without earning. And regulated is art RPG closed for people who can't handle negative feedback for owning a closed species. You need to know the difference between all of these, because depending on which of the kinds of communities you're going for, everything will be affected. These will affect who your audience is, the size of your audience, how you make money, how much money you make, how much art you'll need, how your Discord is set up, everything. That's the end of Module 1. In the next module, we go over tools that will be useful for planning.